Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Good Girls. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, on one side of things, we have Beth dealing with the fact is that her mother-in-law, Judith, shows up, and obviously that complicates things because I love it because obviously Dean's caught between like his wife and his mother because it's just kind of like he's trying to keep the peace and stuff like that, but they're kind of basically at war with each other, especially when Kenny was like, it's like, oh, she's like, go, because he tells like an inappropriate joke, and his mom's like, oh, just go, go do your homework or something. It's like, oh no, but he should finish eating, and so it's this little back and forth, and Dean's the entire time like trying to tell a story, just like trying to cut the tension with a knife, and then it's just like, you know what, how about we all, what was it, I forgot what her exact wording is, but Beth was like, yo, let's go dig into these like brownies or something like that, and her and all the kids go to the brownies, and Dean is just left at a table with his mom, and he's like, and he finishes up the story he was saying. So I love that. Just because, and it's actually kind of sad because, because Beth appreciates what her mother-in-law is doing, especially in a time like this. And, she kind of explains, like, obviously, like, they both know what it's like. It's like, oh, like motherhood, like basically your body gets destroyed. And, it's like, oh, everyone looks at this. Oh, little precious little baby. Here I am over here. I don't exist. I don't, type of situation. But you find out, like, basically for Judith, it's like what she was dealing with at that time. Now they recognize it as postpartum depression, but obviously back then it didn't have, it was just kind of like, oh, you got the nerves or something. Like, it's just like, it wasn't treated the way it is treated now. And now it's a situation for her, it's like she didn't make as much money as her husband did, so she decided to stay at home. Basically, she had to leave the job that she liked, it gave her something to do. She found new purpose again. And she's basically suggesting that Beth should do that. But Beth was saying, like, you shouldn't have quit your job. And it's kind of basically Judah saying, like, you can't have everything. You can't have the job. You can't have the happy family. Because, yeah, you want to enjoy that job. Well, you won't be here to decide whether or not, make the decisions on whether or not the kids say grace or not, because that was her decision. Even the fact is, having Beth sit in a little seat, like, whether she could say what she wants, you could tell Judith this petty. The fact is she did that, like where Beth normally would sit, she's sitting there and kind of puts Beth in like a corner in the little kid's seat, and even one of her kids making fun of, oh, mommy's in a kid's seat or something, so it's like not the best in that regard. So then you have Ruby dealing with the complicated thing of like, it is interesting, like the different perspectives that they have. Like Stan is very like non-confrontational. Like basically she says like if anyone kind of throws some shit his way, he kind of just takes it. And she's not. She's raring to always go for a fight. So I think it's almost like the opposites attract type of situation because they were in that store for the suits and everything, which I need to circle back to the fact is, right, because he's planning on going to the funeral for Turner because all of them are just like, wow. It's like, I can't believe he's dead. Even Annie's just kind of like, I mean, come on. I mean, he was trying to throw Stan in jail. It's like, Annie, come on. It's like, I mean, he was trying to put all of us in jail, but she's like, still. And Annie's pouring out her coffee and Ruby's like, it doesn't work like that. And even when they were leaving, she poured some more. I love that Beth kind of kneels down and she looks in Turner's face in the picture, puts down the flowers like, all right, let's get back to work, and kind of bounces. And even Ruby and Annie looking like, wait, what? It's just like she felt bad for a second, but then was kind of like, your death actually presents an opportunity. We can actually get back to work. We can kind of go back to counterfeiting and stuff like that. But nevertheless, like Stan wants to go to the funeral and everything. It's like the guy was trying to throw you in jail. It's like, yeah, but the fact of the matter is I'm going there for the purpose of like his family and stuff like that. And so because they did meet was that his boyfriend or was that his husband? His significant other. Obviously they met him. So it's stuff like that. But obviously at the store, the dude, the guy at the store wasn't paying him much attention, and Ruby kind of snapped on that and like, oh, because of that we're leaving. And Stanley's like, oh, so do you validate parking even though you didn't actually buy something? She's like, come along, Stanley. He has to kind of come along, and she finds out later on he went back and bought the suit anyway. And it's a situation of like she kind of makes a fight out of everything. It's like we get seated next to like the bathroom at a restaurant or something like that. She's like, the fact of the matter is no one should be sitting beside the bathroom. That's disgusting. But he's like, oh, you could at least ask to move. She's like, I shouldn't have to ask to move, that whole situation. So it's like she's more raring to go for a fight than Stanley is, because you can make it like Ruby's a little more aggressive where Stanley's very passive. So like I said, the opposites kind of attract in a relationship. So it's actually kind of an interesting thing. kind of circling with Annie. She's got the complicated situation of like, she's out with Ben, her son, and Nancy and Greg, and it's like, oh, they're celebrating and stuff like that. It's like, it's awesome and everything. And until Nancy kind of had to open her mouth, and she was like, our therapist was saying that the fact is that we're working on, like, we're going to couples therapy and everything, and it's kind of thanks to you. And it's like, oh, okay. And Greg was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't talk about this. And it's like, and he's kind of like, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, basically the therapist is suggesting that basically you're broken and you're lost and this and that. And it's like, ooh, Nancy said a lot of shit she shouldn't have said. And sadly, when the time came, Greg was just like, maybe you should, talk to the therapist. And then Annie just kind of looks at him and she's blinking, but she still just keeps looking at him. And it just gets super quiet. And because Greg talks about it later on, Nancy just mainly suggested that because it's just, at the end of the day, she's still hurting. But for Annie, it's like, why should I take the brunt of all that blame? You have played your own part in this too. He's like, yeah, but you didn't choose me, and so I was having a baby with someone else, with my wife, but you didn't choose me, so I'm trying to repair that relationship. It's like, you can repair your relationship without throwing Annie under the bus. It's like you're completely denying your own responsibility in it, which is kind of what Annie was getting at. She's like, all right, I hope you find the light, blah 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 blah. And he's like, you know what? I'm so glad that you're so perfect that you don't make any mistakes and stuff like that. And it's like, once again, it's shitty because it's almost like, because everyone's trying to paint Annie as this person who, she doesn't take responsibility. She's kind of a bit of a child. Yeah, she is. But at the same time, it's like, it isn't fair. You didn't stick up for her like when Nancy was basically throwing her under the bus. It's like, you have to admit your own faults. It's like, yeah, you are. But you have to admit that Nancy kind of went after her personally. It's like, Nancy might try to pretend like everything's okay, despite the fact is, once again, we're talking about the woman that was literally there to help you bring your baby into this world when your hubby wasn't even there for you. So that's why I'm kind of like, it's a little messed up. But once again, she's entitled to be pissed off like she is. And so at one point she planned on going there to the therapist to kind of tell him off. And I love she's there with that little boy Tim, and it's like, why are you here? It's like, my parents are getting divorced, and shouldn't they be here? He's like, what are you talking about? It's like, why are you here? It's like, those are my parents. And he's like, yeah, but do you do drugs? No. Do you have a girl you like? He's like, yeah, no, but this girl, like, I like that. She sits next to me and stuff like that. So it's like, because she's trying to suggest, like, why should other people's problems be your problem? You shouldn't have. So it's basically using herself in that almost example. It's like, Greg and Nancy had their own issues. Like, I'm not the main crux of their issues. They had issues long before our affair and stuff like that. And she ended up kind of going there to talk to the therapist and telling him all that. It's like, the fact of the matter is, it's because Greg, ended up, having his own issues, kind of feeling like he was trapped in that marriage, at least, trapped in the house and stuff like that. So it's not just on me. But then the therapist, his name is Josh, is kind of like, yeah, you're actually looking for my brother. He's actually floor up. I deal with children and everything, and he feels so embarrassed because I love it. Because let's face it, Annie's kind of a big mouth. She kind of goes full throttle first, and then kind of has to, a lot of times, backpedal. So it's interesting. Speaking on those terms, it is interesting because, like, I also love the fact is Ben makes fun of, like, the fact is Nancy's trying to, like, show that she's so, like, cool that she's, an ally or whatever, because she's like every excuse, like saying the name Ben to kind of make up the fact is that Nancy referred to Ben as, Sadie, because adjustment period and all that. So just to kind of overcompensate. But and it was actually kind of this sad thing that Ben says of like, yeah, well, you don't need a therapist, you have me, to kind of fix all your mistakes and stuff like that. And he's like, what? Not all the time. She's like, yeah, luckily I'm free. You don't have to pay a therapist for that. And I think it made Annie realize, like, how much of, in her mind, is like how much of a mess she actually is, because her son is her therapist. Like, it's kind of interesting considering who Annie is, that Ben is as well adjusted as he is. So it's a thing of like, ugh, and I think that kind of hit her, to realize that. So she actually goes back to Josh, and she doesn't really know how to really process it. So you don't get the ins and outs of it, but I'm interested to kind of find out what that ends up being about, like what Lena thinks, because like Annie does have a lot of issues that she kind of has to get through. Like, Ben literally threw it in her face last episode about like the whole thing of like, oh yeah, like any person that shows you even the faintest amount of attention, you kind of jump towards them. That being the whole no situation and everything. So it's a complicated, thing, so I'm interested to kind of, dive into that. And obviously, now that once again Turner's out of the way, they plan on expediting their operations. They plan on picking things up. But it's like, well, how do we go through it without having the issues we had before? And I like Beth suggesting that basically they made the mistake of finding people like them, obviously like the shoppers things, because they found people like them, it led to them finding a Mary Pat. Well, now they're suggesting finding people like Rio, criminals. And then it's like, well, where are we going to find criminals like that? Lo and behold, it kind of lands in their lap because Dean talks about the fact is he was talking mad shit about the movers. He was like, yeah, like, because some of them end up being people out of jail. He made like a joke like that. He's like, I wasn't even talking about them specifically, but it turns out they actually went to jail. These are criminals. And then like Beth starts kind of like losing, like her hearing starts fading out, like, hearing Dean's voice. And then she goes out there with lemonade, and now it's like, home dude is like, going to do it for them, but he has to like take 50%. I even love that whole thing. What was it like? They were suggesting like, how do we know like these guys are legit? It's like maybe they'll like Andy start throwing out like rape as like a suggestion or something like that might happen. And then like you have Ruby being like, well, they wouldn't be able to, they'd get one of us. They wouldn't be able to get all of us. And he's like, oh, so what? Like they'd get me and then you just watch. And she's like, no, then we'd run for help. And then later on after it's like, oh, we'll take 50%. They took the stuff because they kind of were there to kind of, be imposing and stuff like that. And so they bounced with the counterfeit money. It's like, yeah, 48 hours and everything, sure, but I'm getting 50% of the cut. So Beth is like, well, because Annie and Ruby are looking at her and she's like, no one got raped. And then Ruby's like, sort of. So, and when the time came, home dude reneged on the deal. Part of me was thinking, I didn't talk about it, but Rio obviously went back to his family at the beginning. Part of me was like, oh, did Rio get to them? Did he find out like what she was up to so he'd try to shut it down? I thought that's what that was. Turns out not to be the case at all. Home dude's a criminal, so he decided to take advantage of it. It's like, all right, so we'll just call it a loss and we'll, make more money. But for Beth, she brings up a good point. We can't do that because if we let this criminal walk all over us, the next criminal is going to do the same thing over and over again until the entire town knows that they can roll us at any point in time. Side note, did they ever get their money back from those douchebags that they ended up getting arrested, that Turner ended up arresting because they sent them to the wrong car? It's the dudes that Dean hired to kill Rio. Like, I remember like his girlfriend or whatever is like, oh, you're not his mom. Get out of here. She had the gun. I think they never got that money back, huh? Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, it's like they never got that back, and I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer because that money's still out there somewhere. I mean, not unless they ended up spending it, which could be a strong possibility. It's kind of a bummer when you think about that, but now it's a situation of Beth making a point of like we can't just like take it. We have to like stand up for ourselves. So Beth pulls a move of going to like that mover's boss and going like, yeah, oh, like $500 stolen from like my son's bank or whatever. It's like, oh, it's saving up that money and stuff like that. And then the guy's calling is like, yeah, she's a lying bitch or something. And it's like, oh, but this bitch is going to contact your parole officer. So it's like later on, because I'm wondering, did she think like, who did she, because I think when she saw him sitting in the dark, I immediately thought she was thinking it was going to be Rio. And then like she gets closer, but it turns out to be home dude. He's there to kind of return the money. Kind of shows you once again why Beth's the boss bitch. It's interesting because I interpreted it as like, oh, she thought it was Rio at first, kind of be haunted by his ghost, but maybe it's just like maybe from the beginning she knew it was home dude even though he was in the shadows. I don't know what to make of it, but it's like, hey, they got the money with the exception of his cut. Granted, you're not going to be working with that dude. I would assume not, but obviously their plan is to continue operations. That got them some money on for right now, but it's like, I mean, because even Ruby ends up bringing this up to Stan of like, okay, so what if, I found a way to kind of like basically do the illegal stuff again? And he was like, I thought we were done with this. And it's like, all right, so, but Ruby's being more upfront about this whole situation. Now being like, would you be mad if, so it's going to be interesting to see what Stan does. I mean, because even at the beginning they had to, I forgot what they called it, but basically they're basically deciding like, okay, what bills do we pay off? Oh, this money for this bill, let's rather use it for this. It's like, we got to make sure we keep the electric on. Well, what about the phone bills? Stuff like that. So the fact is they have to get a little, it's like, it's kind of a shame that they've gotten so good at that over, having to, pick and choose rather than being able to just kind of pay everything all at once, struggling through everything. So But because they do have more extra money on the side, that they basically then hire people to kind of help out, so they don't need Judith around as much. And obviously, she came there. She's like, oh, like, yeah, because Beth was already there, ordered pizza, and now Judith has to sit in the corner and everything. And I love it. It's almost just kind of like, it's like, oh, but what about what about your schedule and stuff like that? It's like, well, because like I'm getting this manager position and stuff like that, the schedule can be a little more open. We can pay for people to look after. It's like, oh, we couldn't have done this without you. And Judith kind of looks so irritated by it. Like I said, it's just kind of like you're not looking out for the family's best interest. It's just kind of, maybe it's just because she doesn't have much to do, but it's like she's kind of a mother-in-law from hell a little bit. And it's just so interesting, like, why she it seems like her and Beth are good on some points, but then other points it's just like she has to prove, like, oh, I'm a, it's like, I don't know, it's almost like she got something to prove. Like, Beth kind of sadly feels like she has something to prove, but it almost seems like Judith does too. But it's a whole interesting situation. So it's like, oh, like, but out of this situation, Beth kind of walks away a little bit of the victor. So that's pretty dope. And you just see Judith just kind of a little irritated by it. I love it. But she calls up Marcus's mom because, obviously, Beth doesn't know about Rio being bad, but it's like, oh, like, we haven't seen you. Marcus didn't show up at the soccer ball. It's like, oh, no, let's go meet for drinks or something like that. Dean's mom is here. It's a whole crazy thing. So, side note, I should have also brought it earlier. I love that, like, Judith is kind of an ass, like, where it's just kind of like, she talks about Ruby's rouge being so perfect, and I love Annie being like, oh, what about mine? He's like, oh, what are you talking about? You've got youth on your side. And he's like, oh, thank you. And she looks at Beth and she mouths the words, I love you. Also, it turns out because Beth is selling that clock, it's like, oh, that was in our family for so long. And it's like, oh, yep. So it was just so much. Now, I'm so curious to see that dynamic kind of continue going forward. But other than that, Beth is excited. She's going out for drinks, but lo and behold, gets a guest she she didn't expect. And it's like, lo and behold, it's your boy Rio, which I'm like, I didn't expect him to kind of reveal himself so soon, but it's like, yeah, under these circumstances, it's like, oh yeah, because of course he's going to meet with her alone to be like, oh yeah, you're the one that shot me, left me for dead, but nah, I'm still alive. Yeah, because your boy Turner got too cocky and thought he could, control me and everything. He made the mistake of saving my life, because saving my life ended his. So there's also a part of my brain that's like, well, I'd assume he is actually dead, but then there was a part of me that's like, not unless he's faking his death. It's like maybe he didn't actually die. Maybe they're just faking his death to make it seem like he is, so he's actually working from the shadows type of situation. I don't know. I could be jumping to that conclusion, but that the little recap at the beginning made me kind of think of that. We'll see whether that ends up being the case or not, or whether he really is gone. We'll see. But nevertheless, I'm really, really interested to see where things kind of go going forward, because it's like, well, Beth kind of took over the operation and stuff like that, but it's like, is Rio here to claim that back? Is it like, what's he going to do to Beth? I don't think he is, but like, he might not kill Beth. It might be a thing of like, well, he's back, he's alive, he's going to come after all of us and our families. Like, what are we going to do? Obviously, they're keeping a lot of this secret, so I'm sure Rio being back is not something they're going to be quick to tell Stan or Dean. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.